First of all, your reaction to the Germans saying they may take as long as a month to come to a decision. Now, if you're a student of history, you may understand where they're coming from, but if you're not, you'll be perplexed. So, can you explain?
Well, I am a student of history, but I'm both disappointed, but I've got to say I'm very, very angry. Professor Michael Clark, who's one of the top defence analysts in the country, has described this today as indecisive and frightened. I would go much further. This is appeasement, and if you're a student of history, we must learn that appeasing bullies, does not work. And I'll quote Winston Churchill, who said that the appeaser is one who feeds a crocodile, hoping that he or she will be eaten last. The problem with this, Henry, is this is not just some game of international diplomacy. For every day there is a delay, and to be quite honest, the Ukrainians should have been given this heavy equipment months and months ago. For every day there is a delay, Ukrainian blood is being spilt, and the lives of both their soldiers are being lost, and their innocent civilians are being lost. So hugely disappointing and very, very hard. In fact, I came out of a training session. I was working up to 5 this evening, and I came out and just got the news, and my first instinct was really anger and disappointment for my many close friends who are embedded in this in one way or
Cormac,
another.
I can really feel your frustration there. But interestingly, you say that the Ukrainians should have been given this heavy machinery, these tanks, months ago. If that's the case, you can't blame the Germans alone for that, because there are many other countries contributing to this effort, like the Poles, the Finns, Britain, the USA. The USA, who say that the Germans are a reliable partner, even when it comes to the defense and the support for Ukraine.
Well, that's diplomacy, and clearly, nobody can afford to fall out. And the last thing that we need to do, and Putin would absolutely love it, is to have a rift in NATO. So I'm sure there are enough grown-ups around the table to make sure that that doesn't happen. But, I'll quote Alexei Reznikov, who is the Minister of Defense of Ukraine, and it was not this December just gone by, but December 2021, just before Christmas. Alexei Reznikov went on CNN and he said, "We do not expect your boots on the ground. Just give us the weapons we need and we will do our own fighting." I have been predicting for over a year now that this would be genocidal. We have now seen by all 5 tests in the UN Charter that what Russia is doing in Ukraine is actually genocide against a peaceful democratic European nation in 2023. So I take your point. I must make the point also to our listeners that the Brits have consistently been the first ones to step up. In fact, I'm not a military man, but I would go as far as to say, if it wasn't for the light anti-tank weapons that Britain supplied the NLAWs this time last year, Kiev may well have fallen. So Britain has done more than any. But what my Ukrainian diplomat friends tell me is the other importance of what Britain has done has been behind the scenes to encourage other nations to get on board and to donate more weapons. And that's why the recent decision of our government to donate 14 Challenger tanks has been hugely critical. That has been an effort on behalf of our government to break the logjam. So, from my point of view and the Ukrainian point of view, and I always say that I try and see the world through Ukrainian eyes, all of this is always coming a little bit too late. But, it's better late than never. The world clearly did not know that this war was going to be as horrific as it has turned out.
Sure. And Cormac, you say you're not a military man. I'm not either, and probably the majority of our listeners are not. But I'm just looking at a list of the equipment that 9 European nations have pledged. They met in Estonia yesterday before today's Ramstein meeting. The UK, 600 Brimstone missiles, Denmark, 19 French-made Caesar self-propelled howitzers. I'm sure they're all going to help the Ukrainians to defend themselves more effectively. But why are these tanks, the German tanks, the Leopards, so crucial? What impact could they have on this war in the next month or so when Russia is ready to push forward again?
Right. As I said, I'm not a military man, but I listen to an awful lot of military men, and I have really studied this very hard over the last In fact, going back to about 2016, when I worked closely with some of our people in Operation Orbital, which is the British operation that has been training the Ukrainian of armed forces since 2015, actually. What Ukraine needs to do, Russia currently occupies nearly 20% of Ukrainian land. Before 2014, they occupied 7.5%. That was Donbass and Crimea. Ukraine has so far taken back about half of the land that was possessed since the 24th of February. What their stated aims, and I believe what we should all support them to do, is to drive Russia out of Ukraine completely back to 1991 internationally recognized borders. To do that, they need to go on an offensive. And what all the military men are telling us, to go on an offensive of that scale against an army the size of Russia's, you need battle tanks. Now, the issue with battle tanks is the most, and I've been very reliably told this, the most suitable battle tank for Ukraine's purposes is the Leopard 2, this German manufactured tank, of which there are many thousands, not just in Germany, but across many other Eastern European countries. However, the Poles, for example, want to give them, but nobody can donate Leopards without the Germans signing off on the export license. And it comes back, I've heard people today saying, well, the Poles should just tell Scholz to F off.
Yep.
That's probably not going to be very helpful at the end of the day, because, as I say, Putin would like nothing more than to see division within NATO. So I think, this is not just about Ukraine. If Putin is not stopped in Ukraine, he will come after, this will go much further. And
But
people
Cormac, do you remember in the early days of this, there was so much caution because people were very nervous about escalation, about saber rattling, about World War III. Do you think now we know enough to know that if the Russians are pushed back by Challenger tanks, by these Leopard 2 tanks, they will not try and use some weapon of mass destruction?
Well, that cuts both ways. And we used to hear a lot about the philosophy of MAD, mutually assured destruction. Now, I believe, though, of course, we will never be told the exact details, that the Americans and other allies have spoken to the Russians in no uncertain terms to tell them what the consequences would be if they were to use either tactical or strategic nuclear weapons. It cuts both ways. There is no way there is not going to be a massive response to that. So I know more than anybody else can say with certainty what's inside Putin's head and what Putin will or will not do. But having saber rattled to bully us and this is exactly what Putin wants to do. He wants to frighten the West into not giving Ukraine the sort of support it needs. Having saber rattled, and remember, they were saber rattling from the very first day. They were telling us that their nuclear forces were being put on high alert and so forth. Having saber rattled for almost 12 months now, it doesn't seem likely that they are going to actually do that. And I'll be the first to say we can't be certain.